I finally got back on. I'm sorry, guys. Hi, Jordan. Dean, good to see you. Rick, good to see you. Thanks for coffee yesterday. And I just started recording, and I know Richard's written a book which I'd like to talk about and promote. But when I um, initially connected with Richard, I said I'm at a crossroads because I'm trying to help U13 female coaches, and they're doing drills and they're good drills. The repetition is fine, but the teaching is not progressive and intense. It doesn't really teach them to think. And I'm of the belief that most coaches today aren't educated to teach and accomplish a purpose in planning their own drills. And the players don't learn to think. So I asked Richard about this, and Richard, you were talking about your under 18 team and the drill, the game that you borrowed from Tom, and a lot of us have stolen games and drills from Tom. And I really think that I'd sure like you to, if you don't mind, just go back to your starting point. I'm of the belief now, Jordan and Rick, that I really believe all the teams I'm watching at U15 and U13 practices, and they're very good traditional deliberate practices with a purpose, but not the thinking. So I would love to see a lot more competitive small area games. And I'm going to leave it at that, Richard. And let's see if what you say and anybody else can say can change the minds of coaches.
One of the reasons I took on this team in July, and we're in tryouts now. It's the only team that has, the U18 is the only age group that has tryouts out here in the OMHA in August, September. Everybody else does it in April. Because after doing my SEEP presentation to the coaches in April and doing a follow-up in August, I wanted to demonstrate to them the approach and how it works. The response from the players has been very positive. They love playing. I mean, they're 16, 17 years old. They want to play. They've seen every drill in existence, every system, every power play, watching practices before and after me. Well, mostly before, because we practice later at night. And they're doing the circle drill. And the one guy he had more toys out on the ice the other night in the practice before me. He had, those big black pads that you used to divide the rink. He had them stacked in front of a net so that the kids that are 11 or years old or 12 years old have to shoot over the pad into an open net, so that they had like that much net left to shoot at. And he had them going around, all kinds of toys on the ice. And the whole practice was like that, because I'm popping in and out of the dressing room and I'm watching what's going on. And it was almost aggravating to watch, because there was no learning taking place. There was no game-like situation. There was no competitive component, floating in on goaltenders and shooting. And the more I looked at it, the more I've read about the research into the linear approach. There is no support for the linear approach anywhere. In fact, there was just a study I got the other day. In fact, Dean sent it to me from a group, this guy named Keith Davids. His name seems to be everywhere when it comes to looking at the ecological approach to coaching, ecological dynamics, and comparing the linear approach to the ecological approach in various sports. And I was talking to Dean the other day about it, and the head of a rugby organization overseas looked at this guy's practice and called it lazy coaching. You're not doing any coaching. You're just standing there and watching, because the president of the club doesn't know anything about it. The players lap it up. They're playing hockey. I mean, it's a sport is competitive by definition. You know, it's just, but there has to be, you have to have a reason for doing what you're doing. So like the two things I did last night was a 3-on-3 cross ice I was explaining before, Wally, that I got from Tom. 3 pucks, starts with 3 pucks, and then 2 pucks, then 1 puck till the shift is over. Like we did that for half an hour. I stopped them twice to review a couple of points, and the rest of it, they just played. And then the second 3-on-3 was between the blue lines, because I wanted to see and a joker or rover behind the blue line to pass for breakouts and puck retrieval. And they're going full bore. Like they did not stop for 35 minutes in that one. I stopped them a couple of times. No, once. Meanwhile, I was bouncing back and forth from bench to bench to discuss, you know, things that were going on the ice. But I saw an awful lot in those 3-on-3 games because I made the rules such that let's focus on, you know, 2 or 3 things that I wanted to focus on in preparation for our exhibition game tonight. Can't hear you, Wally.
This group totally understands, and we all believe what you're talking about. And I have to admit that while we may appreciate your languaging, like ecological or whatever, the average coach I'm working with, it's a distraction. It's an academic explanation of common sense. You think when you play instinctively, you figure it out. And I totally agree. That drill. Now, did you work on deliberate breakouts?
No.
And you're going to play a game. Is there a point at which you should work on deliberate breakouts?
No.
I love it.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring up the point, and then Tom can speak to this. He had me come out Thursdays to practice because nobody else would join him. I did a deliberate progression for breakout. They just didn't play games and suddenly break out. We went into a end zone breakout routine to the low winger with open pivoting, targeting, facing the puck on each side, goalies passing, then coaches passing, learning how to support low at the goal line, receive it moving before the hash mark in theory. And then we brought in a center who came across the middle. But that what I'm saying here is my deliberate teaching progression, I felt, made the difference with Tom because he's played lots of games. But the idea of breaking down breakout and providing quick low support and the tactical skills of open pivoting, front foot stop, D-start, targeting, like I'm anal about that. So I don't just feel they're going to get the breakout as well as they could. They've got to play the games, but there's a point at which you can do the deliberate practicing and see the payoff. Now, Tom, I don't know if you want to refer to that, but it's a good opportunity because I know that when Richard, you did the neutral zone game and you had to regroup with the person behind the net, yeah, they're naturally going to support in an available high lane, not come to a goal line. I'm just saying that I did it deliberately that way because if they learn to provide low support, and in a game read, they don't have to come low but are open high, that's what the game's about. We just help them figure it out a little bit. Tom, can you talk about that?
Well, I think you combine the two things. So we practice today, and then we have to cut 6 players or reassign them to the lower level.
Reassign.
Yeah, well, they basically are, because there are affiliates.
Yeah.
There are affiliates, but they got to spend another year of developing.
Yeah.
So we'll do that. But on tonight we'll have a practice, which is more. I'm just doing it right now, and it starts with this. A shoot, skating and shooting to warm up the goalies. We have 3 goalies still, and then do this regroup, and then have 3 nets on the ice and play 3 games, a little tournament of 4-on-4, and then a transition game, 2-on-2 to 4-on-4, and 3-on-2 to 5-on-5, and then and we have to leave them 15 minutes early to call the players in, I guess. And the other players will play a full ice game of 1 pass in each zone. But on Saturday we have a game time, but we couldn't get a game, so we're gonna do a lot of team play on Saturday, because I really believe it doesn't happen unless you've taught it. So we'll do team play walkthrough, like what Wally said there, and and always put it in a game situation after. But we won't keep on reteaching it forever and ever. Every once in a while, we'll touch on it if the players seem to be really off course. But I believe you do the combination. And that game you talked about, I learned from Wally about a dozen years ago. He came to one of my practices and ran it. So yeah, that's my thought on how you use games. But there's this Ennio Socoloto, I think his name is. He has a Drill of the Week club that coaches from all over the world send in stuff. And what I've been doing this for about 6 months, is I'm taking a game. You're supposed to put a game in there. So I do one every day, and I'm taking the games out of it. So I've got, I don't know, I got about 10 seasons of games, and it'd be interesting. I think you guys would be interested in seeing, like, these are coaches from everywhere, and the different kinds of games. A lot of things I've never even thought about in there. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Can I just bring up a point about language that you mentioned earlier, Wally? You're muted.
Go ahead, Richard.
Okay, you mentioned language and ecological and all the fancy terminology, which I'm using here because this group is pretty well versed in what those things mean, and you've heard it and seen it and read about it. I don't use that with other coaches. I use the well, I don't want to say dumbed down, but simplified version. So as an example, I had to meet with the parents last night. We're still in tryouts. And the idea was to meet with the parents of the kids still trying out, to give them an idea. Well, they had to see what the team budget was going to be. Is this for me? Can I afford it? I had to tell them what tournaments we were going to. Are we still interested in doing that? And then I gave them an outline of my approach. And I actually put on my website, or on the hockey team's website, I give them the outline of the approach. I'm going to do a weekly blog to explain why we're doing what we're doing. So that when they're sitting in the stands, I already warned them, I don't want to see anybody standing at the glass banging on the glass, because you'll see me in your face right away. But when you're sitting in the stands and watching your kid do this stuff, why are they doing 2v2 with this rule and that rule? What's the idea behind it? So I'm going to explain it to them. They're not the enemy. I want them on side. And when I explained it to them last night, I saw a lot of the dads' heads nodding when I was explaining to them the approach I'm using. I said, you're not going to see flow drills. You're not going to see circle drills. You're not going to see pylons on the ice. You're going to see competitive game-like activities that focus on 1 or 2 things. And we're going to spend, 20, 30 minutes on those things and then move on to something else, which is what I did last night. Like the 3-on-3 blue line one, with one player behind the blue line retrieving the puck. I told the parents beforehand, this is what we're going to do, and here's why. Because I want to see which kids understand how to find space and which kids understand how to funnel, puck carriers into an area on the rink, which are fundamental precepts of the game. And I saw probably 9 or 10 dads nodding their heads. They'd never seen this before. They had no idea what this was. No clue. So the language is really important. But as I have said time and time again, there have to be people who There have to be people in leadership positions in the game in this country who are willing to step up and explain why this approach, whether it's a hybrid approach, as Tom just alluded to, or just a complete CLA type approach, that it needs to be explained. We are the only hockey country on the planet that is not doing it. The only one, except the odd person. And I am a very odd person. So do you see the odd person out there doing it? Like Brian Gillum in Ottawa, he took over the coaching role from me when I left, the head of the coaching program. He's doing it. You don't see it anywhere else. You don't see it explained anywhere else. You don't hear from the people in Hockey Canada anywhere. You hear the Americans, you hear the Czechs, you hear the Finns, you hear the Swedes, but nobody else. So if nobody in a leadership position is doing it, then you go out and you watch practices and you see the toys and 1-on-0 and, well, they're doing it in soccer. They're doing it in the field. Well, really? Who's watching soccer in this country when you're involved in hockey?
Well, Richard, I'm glad John got on this morning because I'm sure he's biting at the bit to get his 2 bits in. When Jordan gets back, I'm always referring to the, and I don't, to me, it's a need. And Jordan does a deliberate breakout drill where you break out from each corner going the length of the ice diagonally, and it's masterful. It's a deliberate drill that teaches low support, center timing, and breakout passing. And it's deliberate. It's not thinking under pressure. But I'm hoping to have Jordan do that drill and record it and have him do a bit of a seminar on it, plus a couple other things he does that progress into free thinking and free play. So, John, you've heard the